going to do this interview about National's broadband plan.
Yep.
And some of the exciting things that you've got to say about that. And there's been a few criticisms out there in the market.
Surprise, surprise.
So hopefully we can cover off some of those. And I've got some questions from some loyal readers.
Yep.
But do you just want to give us an outline to start with?
Well, the outline of it is simply this. We believe that at the rate of progress New Zealand's been making in the broadband stakes, we're literally going to be doomed to the bottom of the scrap heap. Labor published a digital strategy in 2005 in which they had set our goal of being in the top half of the OECD by 2007, and it may not have escaped your attention that 2007 has come and gone, and we're still languishing down in the low 20s of the OECD and making no progress whatsoever. We believe, National believes, that very high-speed broadband can be an enabler of stunning economic growth, as well as delivering new technologies in education and health, and that just the evolutionary slow progress through ADSL to ADSL2 plus and VDSL is not enough. It hamstrings us against the rest of the world, and that fibre is the answer. Fibre will be the answer no matter what. Even under Labor, fibre was going to end up being fibre to the home. It's just that under Labor you're talking 30 years to see it happen. We think it's an investment rather than spending. It's an investment that you can certainly recoup your money very comfortably from, and that it's a role that a government has to play. Questions I've been asked, for example, why doesn't the private sector do it if it's so good? Well, there's a number of answers to that. One, no private sector investor would ever risk even starting this if Telecom could come in and marginally price services street by street to take them out of the play. And if you're likely to say, well, that would never happen, then go and have a look at what happened when Saturn tried to roll cable out down in the Hutt Valley. As they began their rollout, Telecom dropped their pricing substantially on a street-by-street basis and took them out of the play. So no private sector investor without some protection is going to do it. Telecom most certainly doesn't have any strong incentives to do it because it's got such a monopoly in the old legacy-based systems. And after a lot of thought, we came to the conclusion that the government needed to be both a catalyst for this investment to happen and a provider of some of the funding for it to happen. We think it's bringing tomorrow today so that we can bring education, health and other things that New Zealand would be just denied access to if we didn't have blistering speed broadband. Not just the incremental 5 megabits to 8 megabits and maybe then to 10. And remember that even while all that's going on, our up speeds are of like 256k or 512k, because the A in ADSL means that it's asynchronous and the speeds down are getting sort of slightly better, but your speeds up are pathetic still.
So what do you say to the people out there that have said that you used to be in the 90s the Minister for Telecom, and that you're simply going to hand $1.5 billion over to Telecom again?
Well, first of all, none of this money is going to Telecom. We've put $1.5 billion on the table for building a fibre optic network. That's what we've done. And we've said we'll look for partners to come in and match it so that we can get the public-private partnership of a 50-50. Partners. It may be lots and lots of people involved as that other player. You may have people like Vector who have got some fibre already taking a share in the company. You may have some passive shareholding, ABN AMRO or Macquarie type pension plans might want to put some money in because it's a stable investment with as a creature of statute giving them a good rate of return. We might even look to having sort of mum and dad's sort of Kiwis investing through some form of fibre bonds. They'll not even be a participant. That will be up to them. We hope they'll work collaboratively and cooperatively with us on this. This is not handing them anything like a subsidy in any way, and I don't know how even people can say it, and if they say it then they better start showing how that will be, because I've heard it claimed and then no one will say how that actually happens.
It's also been said on some of the left-wing blogs out there that we don't need fibre like this, that we can cope pretty well with ADSL2+. What do you say about that?
Well, I say to them, just have a look at the exponential growth of product and services on the internet just in the last 2 years alone. Facebook, Bebo, YouTube. I saw some figures the other day that Microsoft Xbox 360's website is transacting more exabits now than the whole internet did 10 years ago, just the one website. We're now seeing just an absolute explosion in the demand for product and service, high definition product and service, that you will never be able to deliver down either ADSL, ADSL2+, or even VDSL if it works as well as it's supposed to, and that's yet to be proven. Look, copper will always have significant limitations. Fibre is almost infinite. It's only limited at present by the speed of the boxes we can put on either end.
Okay, some questions from some of my readers. Why can't the $1.5 billion be returned to those who earned it?
Well, actually it is going to be returned to those by way of investing in infrastructure that will grow the economy, make the nation richer, get a rate of return. Remember, this is not spending. I'm one of the few members of Parliament out there who's happy to go to the cabinet table and argue against more spending. This is investment. This is actually investing in infrastructure like this nation has done from time to time when we built an electricity network. I guess the arguments could have been back there. Why build an electricity network? Why not just return the taxes to the taxpayer? When we build a roading network, the same argument. Why do you need this? Just don't build a roading network, give it back to the people, and roads will occur wherever there's a need for them. Well, networks are only a network if they reach right across the population. And if you allow just cherry picking, where just the really lucrative little bits get done, but no one else gets to use it, the network has no value. I think it's Metcalfe's law, which says the value of a network grows exponentially as the number of consumers are attached to it.
So there's been some criticism again of the spending, and it involves borrowing to fund the network. How do you feel with that? How comfortable are you with borrowing to fund what the left wing is saying is spending?
Well, look, well, it's not spending, and let's get it clear. There's both good debt and bad debt, and people even know this in their home situation. Okay, if you borrow money to pay for a trip overseas or a new plasma TV screen or whatever else, that's bad debt. You've still got to service it and pay it off, and you've actually consumed it as a consumable. But if you borrow that debt and invest it in a very good investment, a safe, secure investment that's returning better rate of return than what you're paying on the debt long term, you'd be mad not to do heaps of it. If I could borrow $10 billion myself, personally right now, and invest it at a better rate of return than I was paying on it, I'd gladly do it. That's good debt. Go out and have a look at businesses. Businesses as big as our biggest company, Fonterra, go to the debt markets and borrow debt to build capital expansion, capital equipment, plant and equipment. That's what businesses do all the time. Governments should do it the same. I don't want to put the country in hock to spend money that once you've spent it, it's gone, but to invest it in something that will give you a rate of return over a very long time. I actually think a more stunning rate than either the electricity network or the roading networks given this country if we do this properly.
So why don't we just kill the RMA and make it easier for people to lay cables without government intervention?
Well, actually it's not the RMA that's the issue here. It's to do with the security of being able to go in and not be creamed out by an opponent. You do not want in the cherry-picked zone, say in Parnell, you might have 3 companies all trying to stick fibre through the wall, but in Pukekohe, no one wanting to do it. Well, the RMA may be a barrier. I think part of the whole legislation that will surround the setting up of this entity, and remember we've said there are going to be a lot of questions to be dealt with once we're in government, a lot of that stuff may actually be around making some very specific national standards that have to be adhered to for the laying of this fibre, and then giving exemptions from some of the madcap RMA stuff. Most of the local authorities I've talked to out there are just crawling over broken glass to get fibre optic to their citizenry, and would be very happy to fast track consent processes. I think RMA is really not a major barrier for this, and it can be dealt with quite significantly in the legislation in setting up this company.
So if the local bodies are crawling over broken glass to get it at fibre, is it possible, or conceivably possible, that you could in fact see local bodies contributing to a partnership with the government to roll out fibre?
Yeah, I wouldn't rule local bodies' participation in this out as well. I think they're probably struggling with ratepayers and ratepayers' demands as it is, so they might be a reasonably small participant. But those who want to, I mean, I'd prefer that the thing local bodies did was give us a clean run at things like the consent process, a clean run at all the spatial maps for their streets. They had a policy that no one dug up a street again. When this comes in, we're going to have it in the law. No one can ever dig up a street again without notifying the entity, the fibre entity, that it's being done, and during the course of it being dug up, you can come in and drop your particular ducting and so on into those holes. Because it's just, look, I live in a street in Wellington, and I think it's been dug up 6 times in the 9 years that I've been living in that street. You know, it's either for gas or water or electricity or fibre or another it's just nuts that we don't just say, you're going to do that, we're laying fibre when you do it.
With the comments about subsidies, which you've covered, there's also comments about how about fixing the taxation system and regulation so there's actually an incentive for private business to invest in infrastructure.
Look, I think that those things are very valid, and I think changing the taxation system is something that's central to what National's advocating. But just understand this, that if you're a private sector investor with a lot of money and you were deciding you might get into starting rolling out fibre to the home yourself without the government doing it, the one thing that if I was on the board of that company I would just vote absolutely not to move is the ability of the dominant player to come in and absolutely kill you street by street. It's happened before. The ability of telecom to come in and take you out of the play means that you have to provide some statutory protection for the entity that's set up. Doesn't mean telecom can't be a participant along with Telstra Clear, along with Vodafone, along with others, and we expect they probably all will want to be a participant. But you've got to understand that if the big boy on the block can just take a stick and beat the daylights out of you, no private sector investor is going to be stupid enough to take that risk. But I agree with the taxation regime. I think we've made that a flagship for us. Dr. Cullen hates tax cuts, hates them, absolutely detests them, and he's being forced by Helen into giving them. We love them and can't wait to get into government to actually give people back some of their own money.
It's been said that National's channeling Muldoon, or the ghost of Muldoon now, and Jim Anderton in an attempt to pick winners and do a think big. What do you say to that? Well,
I say there are some things in this country that need to have investment, and there's a public sector good to those elements. I think an electricity backbone network so that we don't have brownouts and blackouts. They are things that literally you can't let the private sector have the right to do, because the private sector quite properly does the bits that it likes and just excludes the bits that it doesn't want. Well, electricity networks, sewerage networks, water networks, roading networks have to be ubiquitous, have to go to everybody, have to include the good, the bad and the ugly when it comes to funding. And the reason why the government has to be a catalyst only, remember this is not just the government. This is not a project where we're just taking taxpayers' money and blowing it. We are only doing this if we can get private sector investors who think that they can make a go of it as well. And if it turns out that they can't, well, it just shows that the idea was stupid in the first place. We're confident, based on the number of expressions of interest we've had already, there will be a heap of people wanting to be involved.
Here's a question from one of my more extreme readers. Why are those of us who want high-speed porn more deserving of taxpayers' money than other taxpayers?
Well, look, I'm not sure how much traffic on this will be porn. Frankly, I really don't know what traffic you watch and what you don't watch, and it's not my business. But just let me give you the roading analysis. I don't know what main freight trucks are carrying out on that road today inside them. I don't know who they're carrying it for. I don't know what they're charging to carry it. What I do know is there's a massive economic benefit in that they're getting access to a public network funded from the taxpayer, and then the competition occurs in the service provider. Look, I think the services in health, education, almost transforming type economic growth about how it works will be substantial. And if there's a smutty group of you out there wanting to watch HD porn, well, you are probably going to get it at any rate through another means. I really don't think that's the issue.
And what about those in cities who cable will have a lower marginal cost for, have to subsidise those in the country like we had for KiwiShare?
No. Every network there is. Every network there is cross-subsidy within it. Your electricity network, if you think it costs as much to provide electricity to somebody at the back of Taihape as it does to somebody in the CBD of Auckland, you're dreaming. The fact is that those networks are only a network if everybody's on it. It's like the postal network. There are very expensive pieces of the network to deliver letters to, but you can't have a postal network where only just those that are economically viable are on it, because then every time you stuck your letter in the letterbox, you wouldn't know if the person you were sending it to was on that network or not. The same with all of the networks we know, roading networks, electricity networks, gas networks, you name it. Yes, there'll always be an element of internal cross-subsidy. That's actually what a society is about. That's what participating in a general society is about, rather than a me-only society where I'll just get the bits I want and stuff the rest of you. I think the benefits of this are so big for the nation, so big for the economy, so big for education and how we deliver it, so big for keeping Kiwis best and brightest here. I mean, I think the thing that should be worrying everyone watching your site and reading your stuff should be about how do we keep New Zealand's best and brightest. It's the biggest dilemma we face. It's such an attractive world out there. There are such unbelievable things happening that we're losing masses of our people that we shouldn't be. This has got the potential to allow them to participate in that world of the future without physically leaving this nation. I think that's its biggest selling point.
Do you think the Greens should jump in behind this as a way of reducing traffic?
No.
They're banging on about traffic all the time.
Oh, look, I think this has got an environmental aspect bigger than just about a whole range of the other things I've talked about. We've talked about telecommuting for a long time, but it's never really happened because it's all too difficult and the quality's so bad. And just understand that if I want a video conference with you now over ADSL, and you've got a 5 megabit and I've got 5 megabit, that's not the limit. It's our up speeds. I might have 512k or 256k up, and so now our limit is 256k, because it doesn't matter what your signal comes down to me at, I got to get mine back up to you at the old speed, and then you've got to get yours back up to me. Remember this, fibre is synchronous. If you get 100 megabits, you get 100 megabits both ways. If you get a gigabit, you get a gigabit both ways. It is not asynchronous like ADSL is, and you will now be able to see HD 1080p style video conferencing. Hewlett-Packard and Microsoft are working on some new technologies for 3D video conferencing that will require massive chunks of bandwidth to make them look, you know, halfway reasonable. You do not video conference with someone if they look grey and faded and coming in and out of focus and the sound quality is rotten. You will video conference quite comfortably with someone if they look just exactly like they did sitting across from you. They're just on a glass panel rather than maybe in the same room as you are.
If we could just touch back on telecom, because there's a lot of people talking about that. A similar thing happened in Australia, and Telstra decided not to play. Mm-hmm. What's your view if Telecom decides not to play?
Well, look, I think Telecom are sensible enough to know that they've got two options. They can be part of the solution or they can be part of the problem. If they want to hang out and play silly buggers, which I don't think they will, then I think that over time that would hurt them and it won't be in their best interest. If they recognise that this is inevitable, this is going to happen, and what the government, what National's proposing will make it happen really quickly, Telecom should want to rapidly participate in being a player. Just remember that there are two major parts to the internet. There is the conduit that we're talking about, that is providing the network. And then there is just an infinite world of content and supply of product. And that's where the competition will take place. If I give you the roading analogy once again, we only have one roading network. But the trucking companies and the courier companies and the taxi companies and the private motor cars are out there all competing with each other as we speak, going for it, paying an access fee by way of a road user charge or a petrol tax. And the same will be for this network. This network will be open access. Anyone that wants to be on it will be able to go on it without any questions asked. The fees they will pay will be related to volumes and distance and all of the other things that you will relate it to. And you will see new, I mean, look, I know a lady here who's in the fashion industry. She said, look, if I could have access to a fibre optic cable to my viewers out there, I would put the most unbelievable 1080p HD TV catalogue together of the most beautiful garments we're making in the fashion industry. And instead of when you go into a Trade Me type site looking at some dreadfully pixelated, very small photo and trying to work out is it something you like, you may actually be able to have a mannequin that's the exact shape and size you are, with that dress on it, and with your mouse twirling it around in front of you on a very high definition screen, seeing the product right there and then and making that decision to buy. If you don't think that's exciting, you deserve to belong back in the days of the old railway line rather than in the days of fibre optic and broadband.
All right, well, I think that covers off a lot of the questions. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
The only thing I could say is if we had the fibre now, we could have done this live instead of recording it.
Exactly. And let me tell you that just again, it's a point I want to just re-emphasise over and over again. There is just stuff coming down the pipe in areas that we've never even thought about. You know, distance learning and telemedicine, telepresence stuff and so on. That if you don't have the necessary conduits out there to allow that participation, if you don't have the tools for your citizens to participate, then we'll actually fall further down the OECD rankings, and that would be a disaster because we're only just ahead of Greece and Turkey and Portugal as it is. And let me tell you, there's a number of non-OECD countries like the Czech Republic and Slovakia and others out there right now who are rolling out fibre to the premises as we speak, as is Amsterdam, as is Stockholm, as is Verizon across the United States. Look, if you think that this is the first and that we're somehow taking a huge technology risk and it might be that we get it wrong and the rest of the world's laughing at us, you're dreaming. We really got to do this in order to even try and keep pace with those nations that are out the front end screaming at it like they are right now.
Thank you.
Pleasure.